Hello, good morning. Thanks for coming back for another Monday devotional here at Village Church. A couple things. No, have not gotten a haircut. It's very long. It's all kind of fallen down close by my head. So no hat today and just a mess of hair still. Second thing, yes, we're still in the book of Numbers. Oh my goodness. It's been it's fantastic studying all of this stuff about Moses and the Israelites. And today we're studying a new guy that has several chapters here devoted to him in Numbers. We are in Numbers 22, verse 21, and we're studying a guy named Balaam for a few moments here. So let's read and look at Balaam and Balaam's story. And this particular story is the story of Balaam's donkey, which is quite the story in the Bible. Let's take a look. Numbers 22, verse 21. I'll read, make some comments. Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Now, if you remember what happened last week, Balaam is a sorcerer, a pagan kind of witch doctor, you might say. Not even really a doctor, though. So he's just more like a diviner. He's a person that would maybe curse people for you. You could pay him to put a curse on somebody or to take a curse off of somebody. I mean, you might... I think last week I said he was kind of like a Harry Potter type of guy. He's a sorcerer. Now, here's what he's not. He is not a believer in God. He's not an Israelite. He doesn't know the laws of Moses. He does not know about the promise that God made to the forefathers of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He doesn't know any of this backstory of that we know from reading Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, and all these other. He doesn't know anything about the Bible or about God. Necessarily, but he has, like we studied last week, he has seeked after the Lord. He has sought the Lord, he has sought the Lord, and God met with him and talked to him and said, this king of Moab. Last week we talked about the king of Moab was getting scared about the Israelites because they have started conquering surrounding lands and settling in these surrounding lands. So this king who has the Israelites that are like settling in all these areas around him is getting scared, like, this army's too great. They're going to take over my kingdom as well. So I need Balaam to come put a curse on them. And if Balaam can come and curse the Israelites, then I can defeat them. So this is the king's, he sends some people, this is his plan. He sends some people to go get Balaam and says, I'll pay you a nice hefty fee, come and curse the Israelites. Balaam says, no, I can't, because he prayed and God met with him and God told him, you cannot curse the Israelites. Sorry, tell them no. They come back again a second time, say, we'll double, triple your fee if you can come curse them. Balaam, Harry Potter guy, seeks the Lord. He says, okay, you can go with them, but only if you do what I tell you. And that's where we're picking up right now, is verse 21, where Balaam is going to get up, go back to meet with the king, go back with these princes and meet with the king. And so he gets up. Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab, verse 22. But God was very angry when he went, and an angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Now, I was a little puzzled when I read this first because, as you know, God said, don't go. And then he prayed another time and God said, yes, you can go, but only if you do what I tell you. And then the very next verse, it says God's angry with Balaam for going. The study notes that I read said, like, maybe God was reluctant to let him go. And also when he started going, God knew Balaam's heart, which... maybe Balaam was going to go, but was going to disregard what God said, like, you can only do what I tell you. So that's why maybe God was angry here. So it's a little bit of a puzzler, but what we do know is that it's important to know that God's not happy with Balaam as he starts this journey. Okay, an angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, she turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat her to get her back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the two vineyards with walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord there, she pressed close to a wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it, so he beat her again. So here is this donkey that sees the angel and is scared and is trying to avoid the angel and is going off the path and is doing, and Balaam's beating the donkey and he's like, what are you doing? Get back on the road, come on, bad donkey. But Balaam does not see the angel. Just the donkey does. So verse 26, then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn either to the left or the right. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she just lay down under Balaam. She just stopped and laid down. And he was angry and beat her with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth. And she said to Balaam, what have I done to make you beat me these 3 times? Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool of me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. Pause, time out. The donkey is talking to Balaam. First of all, this is totally rad. I don't think anywhere else in the Bible there's a story of God opening the mouth of an animal to talk to a human. This is the kind of stuff we see in cartoons and Pixar movies, okay? And Toy Story or whatever is not even Toy Story, really. The toys talk in Toy Story, but definitely in cartoon. This makes me think of Shrek. When Donkey, and Shrek are talking, like this is a cartoon, but it's not. This is the Bible. This really happened. So here's a dude who's his donkey starts talking to him, and he doesn't even say I'm sorry, who's talking to me? Or, I'm sorry, donkey, are you talking to? It doesn't even show that Balaam is surprised. Which I would be shocked and appalled, what's happening? Balaam is just hey, you made a fool out of me. So that's, this makes me laugh and it's completely interesting. Verse 29, Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool out of me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. And the donkey says back to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of always doing this to you? No, Balaam said. Here they are having a conversation, just the donkey and Balaam, and the donkey basically says, listen, I've been your donkey for a long time. You've ridden me forever. Have I ever done this before? And Balaam goes, good point. No, you haven't. So clearly there must be something going on if I'm acting this way, the donkey says, right? And then verse 31, the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So appropriately, he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord asked him, why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away these 3 times. If she had not turned away, I certainly would have killed you by now, but I have spared her. Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I messed up. And he said, I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now, if you are displeased, I will go back. Now, I love Balaam's very appropriate response here to the angel. We see a good handful of stories throughout the Bible of people encountering angels, people like Mary, people like Zechariah, other people in the Old Testament. And a lot of times you hear, do not be afraid, fear not, I'm not going to harm you. And straight up, this angel does not say that. He's standing there with a big sword and probably looks terrifying. And as soon as the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and who else does the Lord open the eyes of? He takes the scales off of Paul's eyes. The Lord does a lot of this, and the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey here. The Lord opens the eyes of Balaam. The Lord opens the eyes of other people that have these encounters, and they suddenly see, what's really happening in the spiritual realm. And Balaam is appropriately terrified and immediately repentant. Which is really important. He goes, scared. He goes, I'm very sorry. I didn't know that you were here. And if you're mad at me, I can just go home. I'd be happy to go home right now. Please forgive me. I am sorry. I messed up. I have sinned. Okay, I did not realize. Now, if you're displeased, I'll go back. The angel of the Lord here in verse 35, the angel of the Lord says to Balaam, go with these men, but speak only what I tell you. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. Now, this is exactly what God says in verse 20, which is before we hear the story of the Balaam's donkey. He says, you can go with these men, but do only what I tell you. So here, my hair is so bad, but that's just my own insecurities coming out. Okay, but here, I think this several verses here, this little story, and the reason that the angel had to appear to Balak is because, Balaam, this sorcerer guy, is because, it's possible this first couple of interactions with God was really nothing new or important to Balaam. Like, he's a diviner, right? He interacts with the spiritual realm all the time, or, whatever. And encountering Yahweh maybe didn't have quite the effect on him as, or maybe it didn't quite put that fear in him. It was just another day in the office, to Balaam. Okay, God says, go with these men, but do only what I tell you. And he's kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm going to go do my thing now that I have your permission. And so the angel comes and in a very like kind of strong, forceful, almost like for lack of a better term, in a mobster kind of way, in a movie where they might put a gun to your head and be like, listen up, buddy, this is what you're gonna do. The angel stands scarily with a sword and like, listen, here's the deal. You have to do only what I tell you, or only what God tells you. This is the deal, or you're gonna mess with me. Big scary angel guy. And that I think Balaam now finally receives this message like, oh, okay, I understand now. Because Balaam's about to go into kind of a terrifying situation, and now with this reinforcement of his instructions from God, he's going to do the right thing. Whereas maybe before, if he hadn't had this interaction with the angel and the scariness and the donkey talking to him, he might not have actually followed through and done what God told him to do. And Balak, spoiler alert, Balaam goes and in next week's story, and he goes and the king of Moab says, can you curse the Israelites? And Balaam goes up and he meets with God and basically says no, and comes down and does it several times. And every time he comes down with a big blessing for the Israelites. And the king of Moab is like, what am I paying you to do? Like, I am paying you to curse them, not to bless them. Anyways, if you think about that in terms of like an employer kind of relationship where the king has hired Balaam to curse the people, you can understand why the king would be upset if he's not doing his job. But and the reason he's not doing it is because he has had this encounter with this angel and with the Lord to reinforce the fact that you have to do only what God tells you to do. Okay, Balaam, you can't just do what you normally would do and do your gig and go home. You got to do what God tells you to do. It's very important. So, okay, coming to the end of our chapter here soon. So when Balak heard that, not Balak is the king, I know Balaam, Balak, similar names. When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he was excited. He went out to meet him at the Moabite town of Arnon. At the Moabite town on the Arnon border at the edge of his territory. King Balak said to Balaam, did I not send you an urgent summons? Why did you not come to me? Am I not able to reward you? Am I really not able to reward you? Like, what took you so long? Come on. He's in a hurry to get this all done. Verse 38, well, I have come to you now, Balaam said. But can I just say anything? I must speak only what God puts in my mouth. So he's just letting him know first off, like, I can only tell you what God tells me to tell you. I can't just say whatever you want me to say. So he gives him that warning up front, which is good. Then Balaam went with Balak to a place that I can't pronounce. Balak sacrificed cattle and sheep and gave some to Balaam and the princes who were with them. The next morning, Balak took Balaam up to Bamoth Baal, and from there he saw part of the people. So they go up to a high place where they can look down into the valley and see part of the Israelites that have settled in place is right near them. Let's see, the king has met Balaam on a border town. So they're going up to a high mountain and they can see the Israelites that have settled. Chapter 23. Balaam said, "Build me 7 altars here and prepare me 7 bulls and 7 rams for me." Balak did as Balaam said, and the 2 of them offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, "Stay here beside your offering while I go aside. Perhaps the Lord, Yahweh, will come meet with me. Whatever he reveals to me, I will tell you." And then he went off to a barren height. Verse 4, God met with him. And Balaam said, "I have prepared 7 altars, and on each altar I have offered a bull and a ram." The Lord put a message in Balaam's mouth, and he said, "Go back to the king, to Balak, and give him this message." So he went back to him and found him standing beside his offering with all the princes of Moab. Then Balaam uttered his oracle, and he utters this blessing on the Israelites. We're going to stop. Actually, no, I'll read the blessing. "Balak brought me from Aram, the king of Moab from the eastern mountains. Come," he said, "curse Jacob for me. Come, denounce Israel. How can I curse those whom God has not cursed?" Or, if you flip that a little bit, how can I curse those whom God has blessed? You might say, how can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced? From the rocky peaks I see them. From the heights I view them. I see people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my end be like theirs. The king heard this, and Balak said to Balaam, "What have you done to me? I brought you here to curse my enemies, but you have done nothing but bless them." He answered, "Must I not speak what the Lord puts in my mouth?" So basically in this oracle, which is kind of like a prophecy, but Balaam is not a prophet, he's a diviner, so they're calling this in the Bible oracles. Balaam is saying, I can't curse someone that God has blessed. God has blessed the Israelite people. I can't do anything about that. In fact, I would love to join in on that blessing. I would love to be a part of the Israelites. His last verse, let me die the death of the righteous. May my end be like theirs. Let me join in with them. I'll go be one of the Israelites. So Balaam, of course, is furious. But I had a couple of little thoughts here that I thought we could talk about real quickly because we're wrapping it up here. I know I've read a lot and talked a lot and babbled a lot here, but I want to just notice in chapter 23 that as Balaam, the sorcerer guy, is preparing to, give his first message to the king, he goes and they make a bunch of sacrifices. Now, my first reading of this, I thought this is just like the Israelites. They are sacrificing animals to the Lord. But I read my study notes and they talk about this is actually a very different kind of sacrificing that they are doing. So they are sacrificing these bulls and these, what else? A bull and a ram on each altar. So they're sacrificing these animals, but what they're doing is they sacrifice them is they're also pulling out their livers, because Balaam was a specialist in liver divining. So he would often take the livers of animals that they would sacrifice and then put them out and do whatever a sorcerer guy would do with livers and expect that he would see messages in the livers of these animals. So at first glance, it's oh look, they're sacrificing like the Israelites do. But when you read a little bit about it in my study note, it says, no, this is actually more of a pagan ritual and not an Israelite, a sacrifice. So my first thought was, look, he's actually doing this pagan ritual, but God is still meeting with him, which I think is interesting, don't you? A lot of times we think that, if you want to talk to God, you got to do X, Y, Z in a certain order, Well, first of all, you got to believe in Jesus and accept him in your heart, and then you got to make sure you're going to church and you gotta be baptized, and we put all these lists of the rules and all these things that you really have to do. I say in quotes, you have to do, because we like to make lists and rules and regulations and say that if you really want to hear from God, you're going to go to Sunday school, and you're going to sacrifice and give your time in the nursery or sing in the choir, or and then if you pray really hard, maybe God will speak to you. Or if you're at this many worship services and you attend a Wednesday night Bible study, and you do this and that, and we make a list of qualifications and prerequisites of things that you have to do in order to be close to God. And that stuff just isn't the case. Look at Balaam. He is doing a pagan ritual. He is not doing what God lined out for the Israelites. He is not following Moses' law. He is not doing any of the things that God has asked the Israelites to do for them. He is doing his own weird, crazy, pagan stuff and looking at livers. And in chapter 23, verse 4, it's very clear. It just says straight up, God met with him. He did. And this is not the first time God meets with him in chapter 22. 2 different times, and then sends an angel to Balaam, and now he's up doing his pagan rituals, and God is meeting with him again and giving him a message to get back to the king. You see, like I said last week, there's just no prerequisites to meeting with God. You can talk to God and meet with him anytime, any place, anywhere. It's a matter of seeking him. So my first thing that I want to say is that I'm appreciating this fact very much again this week, but also I want you to look what it says here, that they went up to a mountain, right, away from their house, and they went up away, and they did a bunch of sacrifices, and then again Balak says to the king and all his whole entourage, you guys stay here, I'm gonna go a little further up to a barren height. It says so Balaam went alone somewhere away from people, and that's when he met with God. So I think that there's something to be said for getting some time apart from your crazy daily routine, from your normal chaos of life, to go meet with God somewhere. My wife loves to go and be in nature or go to the beach. So sometimes she will drive up to a hiking trail and sit on a rock somewhere, or go hiking, or go down to the beach and lay on the beach and talk to God and meet with God. Just because for her, it's like, I got to get out of the house and do this. If I'm in the house, I'm doing a bunch of house stuff. I'm working, or I'm cleaning or cooking or doing whatever, writing songs and all the stuff that she does all the time. And so to get away from all that helps her to separate from that crazy chaos of life and to meet with God. And this is important. Get away and meet with God. Get away somewhere. Go sit on a rock in your backyard, or go up to a hiking trail and sit on a rock there, or do something. Balaam went off to a barren height. He got away from the crowd, and this is exactly what Jesus does in the Gospels so many times. Jesus leaves the crowd, he leaves his disciples, he goes off to pray alone. He gets away to meet with God, okay? He gets away from his iPhone. Okay, gets away from his computer and his kids and everything. And even if it's just for a few minutes here or there, or maybe it should be a couple of hours, or maybe whatever. But that's where God meets with Balaam. That's where God and Jesus commune, is away from the crowds, away from the distractions. And I think this is important. So I encourage you this week to get away and meet with God. Get away somewhere. Don't just sit in your office and expect, that in the chaos of the ping, ping, ping of your emails and your phone and all of the media that's coming at you, and the distractions and the fun of Facebook and everything else, that God is going to break through all of your walls of distractions. He could if he wanted to, but I think we allow ourselves to be entertained by everything that we're doing, and sometimes we forget about getting away from that and meeting with God. Okay, so the second thing I want to tell you is this. I found that it was here that the fact that Balaam was doing a pagan ritual and meeting with God, my first inclination was, wow, my thought was, boy, God really can meet with anybody, right? So why was I so surprised that Balaam would be doing something like Balaam would normally do in order to meet with God? Okay, my thought is here. We too often expect non-believers to act like believers, right? Why do we expect that a non-believer, someone who's, in this case, who's not a part of the Israelites, who's not a part of God's chosen people, who doesn't know anything about Moses or the Ten Commandments, why would I expect when I'm reading this, that he would know anything about the proper way to sacrifice to the Lord, the laws of God, that he would know anything about how to meet with God, because he doesn't know anything about the tabernacle, he doesn't know anything about the temple or the Ark of the Covenant or any of the stuff that Moses and the Israelites are doing. He doesn't know any of that. He doesn't know the story or the history. He knows nothing about it. And so why would I expect in my current life that a non-believer should act like a believer? Why would I expect that any of my friends that don't know Jesus would have any of the same values that I have as a person who does, or to behave like God? Why would I expect a non-believer to behave like God has called me to behave or to be? A lot of times we as a church, or we as a culture of Christians, expect that a non-believer who doesn't know anything about Jesus or the cross or grace or forgiveness or whatever should act like we do, and that's crazy. Like, that's just insane. We should remember that everyone who doesn't know Jesus is lost. Okay? We like to say that they're wrong about a lot of things. We like to condemn them and judge them and say, you guys got this wrong, but they're lost. Okay, they're not just wrong, they're lost. And this was something that was an important value for me to learn. I think I first came upon this idea in college, and it has been reaffirmed throughout my life that I can't expect a non-believer to act like a believer, and I can't expect a lost person to have the same heart for God that a believer would have. So, just a couple of thoughts for today. Get away and meet with God, and let's not expect non-believers to act and behave like a believer. And we cannot have those caveat there that God can meet with whoever God wants to meet with. Wow, well, darn it, there's a lot here that I have talked on and on about. So appreciate you listening and staying with me as we go through Numbers. We're going to talk about all of the next, the oracles of Balaam in the next week. He's got a few oracles, and it's pretty cool. We'll see what Balaam says, and then we'll get back to Moses, I guess, here coming up soon. So have a great week. Love you all. Thanks for listening. Have a good Monday. See you next Monday. Bye.